The origin of basketball. Unlike that of most popular sports, the origin of basketball is concise and all-American. Basketball was invented in December 1891 by the Canadian clergyman, educator, and physician James Naismith. Naismith introduced the game when he was an instructor at the Young Men's Christian Association Training School, now Springfield College, in Springfield, Massachusetts. At the request of his superior, Dr. Luther H. Gulick, he organized a vigorous recreation suitable for indoor winter play. The game involved elements of American football, soccer, and hockey, and the first ball used was a soccer ball. Teams had 9 players, and the goals were wooden peach baskets affixed to the walls. By 1897 to 1898, teams of 5 became standard. The game rapidly spread nationwide and to Canada and other parts of the world, played by both women and men. It also became a popular informal outdoor game for U.S. servicemen in World War II, 1939 to 1945. A number of U.S. colleges adopted the game between about 1893 and 1895. In 1934 the first college games were staged in New York City's Madison Square Garden, and college basketball began to attract heightened interest. By the 1950s basketball had become a major college sport, thus paving the way for a growth of interest in professional basketball. Basketball gained inclusion in the Olympic Games in 1936 and grew in international popularity following World War II. The first pro league, the National Basketball League, was formed in 1898 to protect players from exploitation and to promote a less rough game. This league only lasted 5 years. It is interesting to know that in the early years the number of players on a team varied according to the number in the class and the size of the playing area. In 1894 teams began to play with 5 on a side when the playing area was less than 1,800 square feet, 167.2 square meters. The number rose to 7 when the gymnasium measured from 1,800 to 3,600 square feet, 334.5 square meters, and up to 9 when the playing area exceeded that. In 1895 the number was occasionally set at 5 by mutual consent. The rules stipulated 5 players 2 years later, and this number has remained ever since. Since James Naismith and 5 of his original players were Canadians, it is not surprising that Canada was the first country outside the United States to play the game. Basketball was introduced in France in 1893, in England in 1894, in Australia, China, and India soon thereafter, and in Japan in 1900. In the early years, baskets were frequently attached to balconies, making it easy for spectators behind a basket to lean over the railings and deflect the ball to favor one side and hinder the other. In 1895 teams were urged to provide a 4 by 6 foot, 1.2 by 1.8 meter, screen for the purpose of eliminating interference. Soon after, wooden backboards proved more suitable. Glass backboards were legalized by the professionals in 1908-09 and by colleges in 1909-10. In 1920-21 the backboards were moved 2 feet, 0.6 meter. And in 1939-44 feet, in from the end lines to reduce frequent stepping out of bounds. Fan-shaped backboards were made legal in 1940-41. A soccer ball, football, was used for the first 2 years. In 1894 the first basketball was marketed. It was laced, measured close to 32 inches, 81 centimeters, or about 4 inches, 10 centimeters, larger than the soccer ball, in circumference, and weighed less than 20 ounces, 567 grams. By 1948-49, when the laceless molded ball was made official, the size had been set at 30 inches, 76 centimeters. One of the first and greatest pro teams was the original Celtics, organized about 1915 in New York City. They played as many as 150 games a season and dominated basketball until 1936. The Harlem Globetrotters, founded in 1927, a notable exhibition team, specializes in amusing court antics and expert ball handling. In 1949 2 subsequent professional leagues, the National Basketball League, formed in 1937, and the Basketball Association of America, 1946, merged to create the National Basketball Association, NBA. The Boston Celtics, led by their center Bill Russell, dominated the NBA from the late 1950s through the 1960s. By the 1960s, pro teams from coast to coast played before crowds of many millions annually. Wilt Chamberlain, a center for the Los Angeles Lakers, was another leading player during the era, and his battles with Russell were eagerly anticipated. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, also a center, came to prominence during the 1970s. Jabbar perfected his famed sky hook shot while playing for the Los Angeles Lakers and dominated the opposition. Interest in the game deepened as a result of television exposure, but with the advent of cable television, especially during the 1980s, the game's popularity exploded at all levels. Attendance records were broken in that decade by most of the franchises, a growth pattern stimulated at least in part by the increased coverage by cable television. By the passage of time, more noticeable alteration in the game came at both the playing and coaching levels. Stanford University's Hank Luisetti was the first to use and popularize the one-handed shot in the late 1930s. Until then the only outside attempts were two-handed push shots. In the 1950s and 60s a shooting style evolved from Hank Luisetti's push-off one-hander to a jump shot, which is released at the top of the jump. West Virginia University guard Jerry West and Purdue University's Rick Mount were two players who demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of this shot. Coaching strategy changed appreciably over the years. Frank W. Keeney, coach at the University of Rhode Island from 1921 to 1948, is credited with introducing the concept of fast break basketball, in which the offensive team rushes the ball up court hoping to get a good shot before the defense can get set. Another man who contributed to a quicker pace of play, particularly through the use of the pressure defense, was Adolph Rupp, who became the University of Kentucky's coach in 1931 and turned its program into one of the most storied in basketball history. A group of basketball stylists who never received the acclaim they deserved, because in their heyday they played for various towns, consisted of Edward and Lou Wachter, Jimmy Williamson, Jack Inglis, and Bill Hardman. They introduced the bounce pass and long pass as offensive weapons and championed the rule, adopted 1923-24, that made each player, when fouled, shoot his own free throw. Although basketball is traditionally a winter game, the NBA still fills its arenas and attracts a national television audience in late spring and early summer. As the popularity of the league grew, players' salaries rose to an annual average of more than $5 million by mid-2000s, and some superstars earned more than $20 million yearly. In 2005 the NBA instituted a rule stipulating that domestic players must be at least age 19 and have been out of high school for 1 year to be eligible for the draft, which in effect required players to spend at least 1 year in college or on an international professional team before going to the NBA. Clara Baer, who introduced basketball at the Sophie Newcomb College for Women in New Orleans, influenced the women's style of play with her set of women's rules, published in 1895. In the early 1980s control of the women's college game was shifted from the Association for Intercollegiate Athletics for Women, AIAW, to the NCAA, a move that not only streamlined the operation and made it more efficient but also added to the visibility of women's basketball. The women's NCAA championship tournament runs concurrently with the men's, and many of the games are nationally televised. Women's basketball became an Olympic sport in 1976. Basketball has been embraced around the globe, notably in Spain, Italy, China, and Australia, where many contributions have been made to basketball's varied history. Are you a basketball fan? Let us know about your favorite team. Thank you for watching.